We're live.
We're live.
Welcome, everybody. It's Lynda Lamp here, and Mary. Are
Tanya, like lasagna.
I know, like lasagna. I look at it and then I get stuck. Thank you, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
We're here today hosting Let's Become a Beloved Society, Conversations Illuminating Your Path to Wholeness. This is the second time we've met. But the first time we met, we, as those of you who were with us know, we encountered a number of technical issues. So we're not going to post that recording as a live podcast, but it is available if you want to go and look either in the Facebook stream or the YouTube stream. You'll find it there. One of the things we thought we'd do was talk about why it is we had so many technical difficulties last broadcast. There's a saying that I'm very fond of, and I believe really applies to what's happening in today's world. Thank you. Amber is here. It's great to see you. The phrase is, the dying donkey kicks the hardest. And it's my belief that the phase that we are in on this planet right now is that basically everybody is experiencing this dying donkey kicking. The energy of love is pushing itself forward. The energy of inclusion and of transparency and of truth. And the energy that's still here of the old sort of patriarchal, oligarch, racist, non-inclusive energy is fighting to survive. And we see it in the news every day, all over the country and the world. In Alaska, the state legislature just entertained a bill to allow teenagers to marry. It didn't pass. In Florida, they're entertaining a bill about not being able to use the word gay, and punishing parents of children who are exploring transgender status or other non-binary sexual statuses, punishing the parents for parenting their children. And so in last Friday, I believe that what we were experiencing was some of that energy trying to pretty much derail Mary and myself from this project. But as you all know, we persevered, we stayed with it, we completed an hour, and we'll do that today. And we're going to keep right on doing that every week that we can, for the foreseeable future. So we're here. As a result of some of that technical problem, there were a couple of things that happened in the broadcast that's out there. And the question was, will you take it down? Will you remove it or not share it? Because at one point, there was even a small bit of profanity that occurred. And so, so for those of you that haven't heard the last broadcast, the issue was that there were a lot of technical issues, but one of the technical issues was that I couldn't hear Mary. What we didn't realize was that everyone else could hear Mary. And so at one point there was a F-bomb that got put off. And so the question becomes, how will people react to that? Like, should we be concerned about the way people will react if they come across that? And as Amber is saying here, she laughed hard, right? Amber was watching, and when it happened, she laughed. So I wanted to touch on this because how you react to that moment isn't really about us or what we did. How you react to that moment is really about you. And so if you took offense to that moment, it's really an opportunity for you to ask yourself, why did you react the way you did? What was the problem with it? Because in essence, the two of us were doing the best we could, right? We're in the moment. We're trying to do this broadcast. All of a sudden, the technology's not working. I'm trying to persevere. Mary's trying to figure out how to get here so she can participate, so I can hear her.
And Mary thinks nobody can hear her. So
Right.
It's a great little window into how Mary deals with frustrations when she thinks nobody can hear her.
Well, and that's another good point too, because how we act when we're alone is probably our truest nature, right? We're probably most likely to be as relaxed as we're going to be when we're just dealing with ourselves.
And one of my students who was listening said that she and her mother, who she had listened, found it really sort of refreshing because, like, a lot of times when people do these things, there's this attempt to be perfect, right? And they wouldn't even release something like this that's such a mess, sort of,
Right.
But it's like we're being real, and this is real life, and that's really what this broadcast is about, because we, all of us, the world, are in the midst of like craziness. And how do we be here, right, in this? And sometimes things happen, and how do we deal with it? And I might drop an F-bomb, and I'll also probably laugh because I laugh a lot. And, that's just real life and part of how we handle going forward in the midst of the trials and tribulations, right?
Exactly. And Amber made the comment, good thing it wasn't me, you would have had to delete it. No, I don't think so, Amber. I think that this is really part of what we need to be able to become comfortable with, right? The truth, the transparency. So somebody got exacerbated and dropped a swear word. So what? Did it hurt anybody? No. Did it destroy anything? No. It was a moment. And so I'm choosing to leave that recording out there on Facebook, on several pages and streams, and also on YouTube for that exact reason. That was life. That's real. Now, I'm not going to try and put it out there for a podcast.
Yeah.
I think that there's an expectation when you put something out at the podcast level that it be of a certain quality. And so I'm not going to take that extra step, but I'm not going to hide it or delete it or edit it even. It's completely unedited. And that's my intent, unless there's something that happens, like somebody comes into the building I'm in and slams the door. I might edit that out. If, for example, someone were to call in and we were to have some kind of an inappropriate exchange, I might edit that out. But to make us look good, I'm not editing things, right? This is it. This is live. This is real. This is authentic. Exactly. It's authentic. I did want to mention, let me flip the page here so I can get you that. We are also Zooming. So anybody that wants to join us on the Zoom, that number is 886-8976-8646. So if people react badly, the question becomes, what do their reactions mean? And what do their reactions say about us? And what do their reactions say about them? So ultimately, their reactions about us don't mean anything because they're reacting to us through their own filter. So anything in terms of reactions are for the viewer or listener to tend to. Now, what will happen during the course of this show, today and other days, I'm sure, is that something will get said and it will bring something up for you. You will have a reaction. That's the time to reach out, either call the studio cell phone, which is on the screen here, 907-351-3003, or type in the chat box so that we can help you process it. Because quite often we'll have a reaction to something, and if we don't take the time to really look into what was that, then the next time something similar happens, we'll have that same reaction, and we'll keep having that reaction until we actually process what it is that's going on internally. Mary?
Huh?
Anything to add to that?
No, I think you covered it pretty well, and we are absolutely interested in having a dialogue. If anything we say brings something up in you, that's really part of what we want to do here. We really, really want this to be a conversation, not just between Lynda and me, but between us and you. That's why we're here. And, I think that the way things are in this world right now, we can all kind of use all the support we can get from people who are on the wavelength of being able to support our growth. And, so that we really would love to hear from you. If you have a reaction that you want to discuss with us, or a question related to anything that we're talking about, emphasizing that.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Mary. So I think the next thing, there was a question that someone asked, basically, who do we think we are? Why would someone want to listen to us or have a conversation with us? And I'm going to go ahead and have Mary respond first to that question.
Yeah. Lynda said that someone sort of asked her that when we were discussing this initial idea of wanting to do this, and it's like, we are like you. We are people here in this world trying to live our best life under trying circumstances, trying to create a beloved society, and we are people who have been enough in this to really feel to our core that we are love. That is our true self, who we are. And honestly, Lynda and I became friends on Facebook because there was a conversation going on, and she posted an answer or a comment that was like, it was so filled with that heart-filled energy of love that I want to know that person, because she was like who I wanted to become. So I know she didn't know I was going to say that. I sprung that on her. But, it's like, that is how our relationship was born, was my deep desire to learn what I could about opening my heart even further. And Lynda was a person who I saw could help me grow in that direction. And indeed, she has. And I think that what we really need right now are the people who can help us shine the light going forward of what we want. So we don't get stuck in what this society feels like right now, which can be a bit less than loving, even more so now than when we hatched this idea a few months ago. And, just keep our eyes focused on the light that we want to shine into the world, which is the light of our hearts, and how to do that in these challenging times. And, the thing I thought of was that Marianne Williamson quote, which is, we met on Marianne Williamson's page. And it's like, who are we not to do this? We are God's children as much as anybody. we are that light and that love as much as anybody. And our playing small doesn't serve the world. And we're both here wanting to bring more love into this world and create a heart-based, beloved society. So we're the perfect people to do it.
Thank you. And I agree. I came across, there's an astrologer that I really enjoy following by the name of Lorna Bevan. Her her astrology business is called uh, Hair of the Moon, Hare of the Moon. She's in England, I believe. She made a post the other day and she shared this poem, and it really it resonates with me to a degree that I won't be able to get through it probably without getting choked up. So I'll warn you ahead of time, because this thing I'm about to read you really resonates with my entire life. Because for those of you that don't know my background, I was born knowing that I had come here for a reason. I was born with two things. I knew that there was something I was supposed to come here to do, and there was somebody I was supposed to find that was going to help me do what I'm supposed to do. And so from the very beginning, I've had this mission. So let me read this. This is from Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and it's called Soul on Deck. Ours is not the task of fixing the entire world all at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. Any small, calm thing that one soul can do to help another soul, to assist some portion of this poor, suffering world, will help immensely. It is not given to us to know which acts or by whom will cause the critical mass to tip toward an enduring good. What is needed for dramatic change is an accumulation of acts, adding, adding to, adding more, continuing. We know that it does not take everyone on earth to bring justice and peace, but only a small determined group who will not give up during the first, second, or 100th gale. One of the most calming and powerful actions you can do to intervene in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul. Soul on deck shines like gold in dark times. The light of the soul throws sparks, can send up flares, builds signal fires, causes proper matters to catch fire. To display the lantern of soul in shadowing times like these, to be fierce and to show mercy towards others, both are acts of immense bravery and greatest necessity. Struggling souls catch light from other souls who are fully lit and willing to show it. If you would help to calm the tumult, this is one of the strongest things you can do. There will always be times when you will feel discouraged. I have felt despair many times in my life, but I do not keep a chair for it. I will not entertain it. It is not allowed to eat from my plate. In that spirit, I hope you will write this on your wall. When a great ship is in the harbor and moored, it is safe. There can be no doubt. That is not what great ships were built for. So that is Mary and me, right? We are souls on deck.
Yes.
You can picture us standing on the bow with a lantern in our arm, in our hand, navigating, showing the way. We're not the only ones here. There are lots of us here.
Yes.
But that's what we're here for. Amber says, that's beautiful. I got chills.
Yes.
That's what happens to me every time I read it. I get to that end, and I came here for a purpose, and I have never been more sure that I am on purpose, in purpose, right now, as I do this. And I believe Mary feels the same way.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't come in like Lynda knowing I was here for a purpose and everything. I had to kind of grow into that in life, as many of us do. But I do now understand that I do have a purpose, and Lynda and I have purposes that dovetail very nicely, which is why we're here together. And also, I think we kind of balance each other because Lynda came into this life knowing a lot more than most of us remember. And I'm a little bit more, I think that I can bring it back down to earth if she's a little, higher elevation than we can hear in that moment sometimes. So that poem, though, I love that poem. And yes, I love knowing that I'm a ship. I'm a ship, and I'm out there on those seas, and sometimes they're rough, and I try to keep my feet under me as best I can. And, and that's what the process is, right? We're all on this sea, and we're all trying to keep moving as best we can. And that's much easier to do if we're supporting each other in those moments. And the other thing I love about that poem is it really is a reminder that I don't have to do everything. Thank you. Because I can't. There's so much going on in the world. And the part that I can actually deliberately, that might not be the word, actually affect is limited, but that's okay. Doing the part that I can do is enough. That's my portion, right?
Right.
The stuff that's in front of me here in my world, that's my portion. And that doesn't have to be big and fancy. And it doesn't even have to be what Lynda and I are doing here. But this is a way to broaden our reach, hopefully, and support more people. And I know that both of us, as we go through our life, this is what we do. This is what we do. I do this at my job. I support the people I come into contact with. I talk to them about things as much as they want to talk to them, and just share. When we share the best parts of ourselves with each other in a supportive way, we all grow and benefit, right?
Right.
So that's why we're here.
Yep, that's why we're here, and that's who we are. And I think there's the Rumi quote as well. We're all just walking each other home.
Yes.
And that's what we're here for, right? If you're having a difficult time, if you have questions about how life is supposed to be working, this is a resource for you.
Yes. Not the only resource. And we definitely are not of the belief that we are 100% right about everything.
Right.
And it's not about you've got questions, we've got answers. It's about you've got questions, let's talk about them. Let's find our way together. We're walking each other home. Lynda and I are walking each other, and we're walking Amber, and Amber's walking us, and everyone else out there. I only know she's here because she commented, but we're all walking each other. And there's not even any teachers and students. We're all all of those things. We're all companions,
right,
on the road and in the work, right?
So another question that came in, and by the way, feel free to call the studio phone. Oh, you know what? Don't tell me. Where is the studio phone? I'm sure it's here somewhere. Um,
If it rings, you'll find it.
if it rings, I'll find it. It's 907-351-3003. We can put you on speakerphone. You can put your comment or question in the chat. You can join us via Zoom if that's better for you at 886-8976-8646. Somebody asked if there was some exercise that they could use or some moniker or just something that they could go to when they were having a difficult time dealing with people. And it was specifically about either riding on the transit or walking in the subway station. And I wanted to share, I used to live in New York City. I'm a native New Yorker. I was born there. But then as a young adult, I went back and I lived there for a number of years. And one of the techniques that I used, and I know Mary will probably have something to share as well because she rides the transit. How do we look at people and love them? People that we don't know, random people, bums laying on, on the sidewalk, or sleeping on the bench in the subway, or
Who
urinating
smell
behind the
bad.
pole, right? Or urinating behind the pole while we're walking past. The technique that I use, the exercise that I would use, is to imagine and to remember that everybody at one point was somebody's baby. And when you put your mind in that place where you're looking at someone who is initially has annoyed you or made you uncomfortable in some way through their own behavior, when you go through that exercise and you look at them and remember that they were once somebody's little tiny baby, it changes something in you instantly. It takes you back to that place of motherly love. And you might even from there ask yourself what happened to them, right? What happened in their life that took them from a little baby being held by their mother to, a bum or a smelly person or whatever it is that they're doing that annoyed you or got a reaction out of you. I found it to be very comforting because we all start out that way, right? And when we're babies, unlike most babies in nature, most animals in nature can take care of themselves. Mammals, anyway, usually they can stand up, they can walk pretty quick. Horses and deer and all those kinds of animals, but we can't. I mean, we can't stand up and walk for months, years, sometime. So I find it to be a very helpful exercise. Mary, what do you use when you're on the trolley?
That's a very good exercise, and I really like it, and I'll start using it. I do a meditation that's like looking from my heart to their heart. So that way you're not seeing the outside person, you're seeing the inside person, like from where I feel love to their love center. And that usually brings me to a higher awareness, so I'm not as blinded by the physical. And another thing is there's a poem by I think it's Hafiz, but it could be Rumi, I don't know, that it says basically we're all jewels on God's dance floor. Like everyone here is by invitation of the divine. We're all here to this party by invitation of the divine. So we're all jewels on God's dance floor. And I'm not going to lie, it can be challenging. The thing that's been happening lately is people playing their music really loud. And I sit there and I ask myself, like, why does that person think that everyone wants to hear their music? And it's like, well, maybe they feel like nobody considers their desires. So they don't have to be considerate. It's like in a society where you feel like you've been forgotten. Why would you participate in the, sort of common courtesies or something? That was my thing this morning that I thought of. And that's just me sort of inquiring into that idea of how did these people, you know, get to where they are. But I really like to see them as a baby thing because I felt my heart soften so much. So if my things don't work, go to Lynda's because that's even better for when you're resistant.
Right, 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 right. And it's interesting. So you bring up the idea of what makes them be the way they are. And I guess my suggestion is to shift that around. So whenever you have a reaction to anything that's external, because as we know from a scientific standpoint, there actually technically isn't anything out here, right? Everything is a hologram, basically, a co-created hologram of our projection. And so when annoyed by somebody or triggered by somebody, the real question is, what's up with me? Not what's up with them, but what's up with me? I'll give you a great example. I've written a blog post about this, but I haven't posted it yet. There's a weatherman that we watch, and he's been on the channel a lot more lately, and he has a unique. I don't want to. I want to describe him, but I want to do it in as kind of way as possible. He has a unique way of moving, and it may be because maybe he had polio when he was a child, or maybe he has muscular dystrophy. I'm not really sure, but it's a very jerky and different way, non-fluid way of moving. And he's also a very unique person. He's got a lot of style and character. And, seeing him occasionally, I never really paid much attention. He's doing the weather, and that's cool. But now that he's on like almost every night, at one point, I realized that my watching him was making me uncomfortable. And I actually, like, completely unfiltered, I turned to my husband and I said, because I have a background in theater and in television and in production in general. I turned to my husband and I said, I think if I were the producer, I would ask him not to try and, tone it down a little. And even as the words were coming out of my mouth, I'm hearing them going, there's something wrong here, Lynda. This isn't right. What you just said, and after the words were out, they didn't sit with me right. I was like, well, what is that about? Well, it's not about him. It's about me. It's about my reaction to him. So what I discovered is that in watching him, with the old knowledge that I have about how you do TV production and, how you do plays and all of that, yes, in that boundary, historically, that would have been what a producer would say to him. But in the 21st century, where we've woken up to the fact that we are each unique, individuated aspects of divinity, that is no way to speak to him. that is no idea to share with him. And in fact, the better thing is to have him be as authentic as he can be, not to try and change his mode for the people who are watching, right? If we are moving into a life on planet Earth where we're going to be authentic and transparent with each other, then everybody should be able to, and don't become offended by this phrase, but there's a phrase, let your freak flag fly.
Right.
And that's how it should all be, right? Every single one of us should be able to express ourselves from our hearts to the level that we choose.
Yes.
And not fear rejection from those people, from people around us and from society. If we're going to build a beloved society, then we are each beloveds within that society. And no one should be ridiculed or put down or told to change in some way in order to be accepted and loved.
Right.
And so now when I watch this guy, I love it. I love it. I've cleared that, right? I've cleared that preconceived notion that I carried around. This idea that, everything has to be perfect and everything has to, and
has to look a certain way.
right.
Things have to look a certain way. They
Right.
don't have to be a certain way. They have to
Right.
look a certain way.
Right. Exactly.
And, we can't create a beloved society if we're enforcing these rigid ideas about who people are allowed to be,
Right. Exactly.
That's definitely one of my sort of pet peeves is these arbitrary rules about, like, you can wear this, but you can't wear that. You have to do this, you have to do that. Like, why can't men wear dresses if they want to? And it doesn't have to mean that they want to be a woman. Dresses are comfortable. I wear dresses all the time, and just little things like that, like, lipstick, makeup. I mean, in a way, while women have had a lot more restrictions in some ways, as far as expression through dress and stuff like that, men are much more limited. And then emotions, people telling their little kid, their little boy, man up. Well, if
Right.
you have a society where the only emotion you allow men to express is anger, then you're going to have the society we have right now, right? Like, everybody needs to have access to their full range of emotions and their full range of expression. And like someone said, don't dance like nobody's watching, dance like everybody's watching. And it's like, woohoo, let
Well,
your
dance like
dance
everybody's
be
watching
like
and
your,
nobody's judging.
yeah, let it all be your expression of, the divine, but that it's the love, right? Let it all be an expression of the love. And that's a question I ask myself sometimes. What would love do?
Right.
I see that Amber says that her husband sometimes wears skirts at festival and no one cares.
Yep.
It's great. I agree, it's great. I'm wearing dresses a lot. I'm wearing tights. I won't say the brand here because I'm not trying to advertise them. But there's a page where we all post pictures of ourselves in our tights, and there are a lot of men on that page who like wearing dresses and tights. And why the heck not? I like it. Why shouldn't they?
Right.
They're comfortable and they're pretty.
Right. Right.
Anyway, fuller range of expression for all is how I feel about it. Unless you're
Well,
hurting someone. Don't hurt someone. Hopefully, don't hurt yourself. Other than that,
right. Right. That's the thing. We've really, through the centuries, become very rigid in our thinking and our attitudes.
yeah.
And part of that is really because most people at some level are broken. And so what we've got now is a planet full of people who were raised by a planet full of broken people, who were raised by a planet full of broken people, who were raised by a planet full of broken people. It's just keeps repeating itself. The biggest thing to understand is that hurt people hurt people. And for example, not only is it an example of the dying donkey kicking, but whatever Putin is doing right now is a big, big example of how someone, when they're hurting, hurts other people. So here's a man who's very unhappy. We can't know all of it, but what we can know is that no one who is happy would do what he's doing. So you can know that he's hurting. It's not rocket science here. And so this is the challenge that modern day society has before it, is to heal itself. And the way we do that is we have to start with ourselves. The other day, I happened to come across a new book by a person by the name of Natureza. It's spelled like nature, and then it's got a Z-A at the end of it. Natureza Gabrielle Cram. And I have the title. What is the title of this book? Restorative Well-Being is the title of the book. And I've only read the first chapter. But in the first chapter, what he does is he asks us each to think of ourselves as a droplet of water. And what he says is events in our lives are distressing when they don't make sense to us. So abuse, when someone is abusing us, it's distressing because we can't usually make sense of it. We usually don't know why the person is abusing us. Now, we can go back to my very simple statement, hurt people hurt people. People who are abusing other people are in pain themselves. It's the most simplistic way to look at it. But if you take the analogy that we are each droplets of water, and you consider what happens to a droplet of water when it's put under stress, either the stress of heat or the stress of cold, or even the stress of pressure, that water droplet's going to change form. It's going to freeze, or it's going to turn to gas, or in the case of pressure, it may split apart into a bazillion tinier little droplets. So if we each think of ourselves as a droplet, and we realize that the people in our lives have undergone various degrees of stress, we'll understand that as they are dealing with us, they are not their whole, beautiful, glistening droplet. There might be a part of them that's like that, but a part of them might be frozen, and a part of them might be steamy, and another part of them might be fractured.
Or squished.
Right, into smaller pieces, right?
Flattened.
So that's what I mean when I say that we have, a society of broken people that were raised by broken people that were raised by broken people. Finding wholeness is something that is always available to us, but without the proper guidance and understanding, we don't even know to look for it.
Mary. I would like to say that this also relates to what I said about when anger is the only emotion available to you. Right. What does anger do? It's violent. If you're hurt, And, if you're sad, you can cry. If the only thing you can be is angry, then you are far more likely to act out in a violent way towards other people.
Right.
And there was something else. I wonder what it was. Hurt people, wholeness. Wholeness. The thing is, in order to be whole, we have to accept ourselves, all of ourselves. That's the other thing, is some of us go on this path to become like spiritual or better or heal. And a lot of times that ends up going into the spiritual byplacing place, where you only want to see the light and the beautiful stuff. And, I love Mary when Mary's her best self. And, love might be a hard word for people, so I'll try to say things like, I accept Mary, or I appreciate Mary, even when she's, not her best self, kind of imperfect. And, Mary drops F-bombs and has temper sometimes. And, she's still my best friend and I love her. That's who I am. But that, for the wholeness thing, we have to be actually whole. That's all I wanted to say.
Right. And so let's touch on the spiritual bypassing thing for a minute. This conversation came up the other day as well, and there was a question around it. A lot of times in the spiritual community, when something bad happens, the response that you'll hear from people is, well, it's all divine, it's all perfect. And particularly if you're in the middle of some kind of trauma, if you've been abused, the notion that everything is perfect is not going to sit well with you, and it's not going to be resonant. It's not even a helpful thing to hear. And so we need to clarify that. When the spiritual community talks about things being perfect, it is not an implication that things are pleasant, right? So one way that I like to say it is, the way it went, whatever it was that happened, the way it went is the way it had to go. Because there can't be anything else. It's the way it went. So we bring ourselves a lot of misery by trying to fight with what's happened in life. It already happened.
Yeah.
So when you find yourself in a place of such resistance that you are fighting the circumstances you find yourself in, try to stop yourself right there and just come to a place of, it is what it is. Don't judge it. You're having an experience of it, so you don't need to judge it. What's the experience you're having? And if it's an experience of unhappiness or pain or abuse, at the hand of somebody else, the first thing you need to do is to take care of yourself, right? And extract yourself however you can from that situation. Because you can't process, you can't work on yourself when you are in the midst of a crisis. The best thing you can do in that situation is to just take care of yourself, right? In whatever way you can. Right. Amber's saying perfect doesn't mean everything is hunky-dory. Perfect, exactly. The perfection of it, when people are saying that everything's perfect, merely means it's the hand of God in action. And no one has a right or business to be saying that God is wrong. That just doesn't fly. So we have to be able to say it is what it is.
I think just letting go of that word perfect can be helpful in this situation if it's triggering or hard to hear, and just, it's what is a good way to look at it. The way I've framed it for myself is I just have stopped fighting with life, right? Stopped resisting what is,
Right.
because what is is. So all of my fighting and resisting just made me exhausted. And, I had big trouble with that word surrender for a long time. And I finally, for me, understand that it's just, and I don't use let it go because I think that that's a hard concept too. I let it be. I let it be what it is in this moment, because you know what? That's what it is. And that does not mean that we don't have the power to affect things going forward, right?
Right.
Like Lynda says, get out of the situation if we can, take care of ourselves. And, that can be harder than, easier said than done.
Right.
But I accept in this moment, this is the thing as it is. And, it just is. It is what it is. I
Right.
don't like that phrase because the way people use it is kind of, but Lynda knows, and I don't know, I don't think I said it here already, but I'm sure I'll say it more than once. My favorite quote from a movie ever is, life is right in any case, and my heart is as open as the sky. So that goes to what Lynda's saying, which is that, like, if it's all divine, and she and I believe it is, your views may differ, but if we are all part of some divine play happening here, then however things go is part of that too. So, like she said, it's not my job to question God, the universe, whatever I want to call it. And from when I zoom out and look at the past, I can see that things have been arranging themselves in ways that I never could have thought of or imagined. So it's easier to believe in that sort of the divine hand thing. And it's not my job to question that. And thank God that goes back to the thing at the beginning. If I focus on what is my job. So my job is, this is what's happening right now, the pandemic, the dumpster fire of life and the economy and all. But what is my job here? My job is, this is my little yard. I'm up here on the deck of my ship. I'm mixing my metaphors, you know, trying to keep my lantern lit as best I can. And sometimes I got to take a nap, and Lynda's there with her lantern. And sometimes we're both napping, and someone else is there with their lantern. And, I'll stop now. But that's what I felt a need to say.
Yeah. Thank you, Mary. Amber put in the chat, I believe what I went through as a child was perfect for what I needed to evolve. Of course,
Yeah.
I didn't see it at the time, but now I understand. And that's where this saying of mine, the way it went is the way it had to go.
Yeah.
Um,
That's how I feel too.
and it's a lot easier to look back and see the hand of God moving things around on the chessboard than when you're in the midst of some kind of trauma or crisis or problem.
Yeah.
It's difficult to see it. And that's when we need to have the most faith possible, right? In the moment of despair, being able to know that as uncomfortable as the situation may be, as unhappy as you may be feeling in that moment, that there's a process that you're engaged in. And
Engulfed is a good word.
right, engulfed in, and
Sometimes it
you may
feels that
not
way.
be able to see where it's heading, but just to have faith that for whatever reason, this is what you're being dealt at the moment. And not to necessarily not to take it personally either. Um, I am in contact with several families in the Ukraine right now, and one of the families is they're on the move already. They've had to leave where they were, and they're moving inland away from the border. And they sent me a question about, why is this happening to us? And I had to remind them gently to not take the situation personally. Yes, it's happening to them. It's happening to everybody. It's happening to lots of people. And it's for a bigger purpose, right? Again, what's happening in the Ukraine, I see as another part of this dying donkey kicking. Things have been allowed to go on in Russia for decades. And what's been going on is not congruent with what's going on in the rest of the world. And so now, when they're finally stepping out and trying to create this larger Russia, they're finding out that the rest of the planet is not in support of this and is responding in a way that I don't think they expected. Because again, for 50 years or so, they've been pretty much allowed to do whatever they felt like. So
yeah,
this is, again, it's the attempt to hang on to the dying embers of something. And it isn't going to happen quickly, and it's not going to be pleasant. But my faith is in humanity. And humanity didn't come here to be cruel to each other, to be competitive with each other. It's not why we're here in form. And we've had centuries of human life where we've virtually forgotten why we're here. And now the energy and the whole universe is creating an energetic imprint that will allow us to awaken from the fog that we've been in. This whole competitive, judging, separated mindset is changing. And yeah, it's changing. Go ahead, Mary.
yeah. And I think that the fact that we're not responding the way they expected is really very hopeful. Like, I've never seen so many so many countries, for instance, all on one side, so many supportive things happening. Like the world is really responding differently, and I find it encouraging. Like the two things that come to mind is there's a picture of mothers leaving strollers at the border for the mothers coming over with babies, and
Right,
also that Poland opened a entryway for people to bring their pets,
right.
bypassing the usual bureaucracy. And it just feels like the energy is really shifting in a big way, which is awesome to me. And the other thing I want to say, which relates to that Lorna Bevan poem, the poem Lorna Bevan shared, which overall I think is beautiful, it said something about there's no place for despair at her table. And I feel like, well, there is, even when I read that, there's a place for despair at my table, because sometimes I feel that way. And I'm not going to tell any of my feelings that they don't have a place at my table, because that gets back to wholeness. I'm not going to fall into the hole of despair and stay there, but I'm going to say, okay, despair, I feel you. I feel that that's where I'm at right now. And that's like everything else. Let it be. It's what it is. So I don't have
Right.
to fight with that either.
Right. So I just want to clarify. I think that when we experience despair, that is not the soul experience. That is the body experience.
Right.
Um, and uh, so we need to, we don't want to ignore the body. The body is the housing that we have while we're here. So it's important to care for the body and to give the body voice. On the other hand, the ego of the body can can really try to lead us astray, because the ego that's in charge of the housing doesn't like change, want things a particular way, and really is much happier if we stay static. So when we're on a quest for wholeness, we're actually going to have some real issues in challenges with the housing as we're moving forward. What will happen is eventually the housing will stop, the ego will stop, and it'll go, okay, I'm ready for this ride. But it's like, you know, coaxing a shy kitten out of a kennel. It takes work and dedication and focus, and it can be done. But your general tendency, if you're not in tune with your body, is that you're going to give in to your urges, which will be basically your ego trying to keep you where you were. So I don't give despair a seat at my table. If my body is acting up, I give it attention and I comfort it, but I don't set a plate for it to have a tantrum at the table.
I let it have tea if it needs to. The way I see the ego issue is, you know, because there's a lot of talk also in some spiritual circles about eradicating the ego, and that's just wrong-headed, because who wants to eradicate the ego? The ego. And you can't. I see the ego as like a big overeager puppy. My ego is trying to protect me from certain death. Basically, that's what it's trying to do.
But it's trying to protect
your certain death.
It's trying to protect your body.
Of course, because my soul can't die anyway.
Exactly. It has
so
nothing
that's
to do
what
with your
it's doing.
soul.
But that doesn't mean, so basically it just needs training. You don't let the ego, you don't let the overeager puppy drive the car. You put it in the back seat and say, chill, you know. But it's a puppy. I mean, I love my ego. It's doing the best it can, just like all of us.
Exactly.
And if I feel despair for a moment or two, I'm not going to deny those feelings either, because all my feelings, and they all come from the body, you know, and they're all part of that reality. And if I didn't want to feel my physical feelings, why would I have come into the physical? I will say, you know, I think when I made the decision to come into the physical, I did not know how dense it really was and how hard it would be sometimes. But, you know, it's still the choice I made, and I stand behind my choices.
Right. And I think this is a good thing to wrap up on. We're a minute or two over, but
yes, we are.
The understand, we would be better humans in general if we had parents that taught us that we're not the housing that we're inhabiting. And so this is what the 21st century is all about, right? Is getting the teaching out there in full, so that all these pieces that have been forgotten over time come back into our repertoire. And as we're teaching children, they can understand when their body is acting up, when they're freaking out, when they're having a tantrum, that is not their soul. That is their housing having a meltdown, because, you know, because that's what housings do.
Now I'm imagining my house having a tantrum.
Right.
It is. It's having a
tantrum. Right. Maybe one of these episodes I'll share my recent experience after having been diagnosed with sleep apnea and the tantrum that my housing was having after that. But I feel like we should wrap up at this point. Thank you to Amber for being here and for all your comments. We'll talk about, I'm going to make a note about not taking things personally, and we'll have a conversation about that next week, because I think that's a big piece, right? Learning how to experience something and not take it personally.
And she's also saying if you don't allow all your feelings, you'll stuff them. And
Yep.
that's probably something we could also talk about as well.
Right, 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 right. All right.
Thank you for being here, commenting, Amber.
Yes.
It's awesome to have that little bit of interaction. And thank you to everyone else who watched or watches or listens. You know, we love you all. We love you all. Even if we don't know you, we love you. It's how it works.
Send your questions to questions@walkingthroughyourwalls.com. You can also call or text the studio phone at 907-351-3003. You can do that anytime between now and then, and we'll see you next week. Thank you again. Thank you, Amber. I'm glad you were here, and to anybody else that was here that wasn't commenting, love you. Namaste. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.